Hey there, Smite fans, Aggro here. Look, every single year, the SPL just keeps getting better. Season 7 was incredible, and in Season 8, I'm sure our players are going to take their game to the next level. But in order to do that, they're going to need the best gear they can get their hands on. And that's why I'm so excited to announce that the title sponsor for Season 8 of the SPL is Alienware. Yeah, that Alienware. Our players are getting the best of the best in computer gaming. These Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition PC setups are insane. Not only will these be the PCs that the players will compete on once we are in studio, but Alienware is also providing one for each player at their home setup to make sure their practice is as good as possible. Now let's get down to brass tacks. The specs on these Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition desktops are amazing. An AMD Ryzen 9 16-core processor.
That's a lot of cores.
That's plenty of processing power.
That's a lot of cores. Plenty of cores.
If you want to stream, this is the way to go.
I know a lot about my cores, so. I mean, Pilates, right?
64 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM.
What? Is that true?
That is true.
I mean, this thing has 64 gigs of DDR4 RAM.
Which you can do literally anything with.
Literally anything.
I've never had more than 16 gigs.
That's quadruple the amount I have at home.
And one of the hottest commodities in the PC world, an NVIDIA GeForce 3090 graphics card.
Insane how much better this is than what I have.
The best graphics you really need, Ultra, of course.
Content's gonna look good.
And what's the point of all the power if you can't see it? Players will also be using the Alienware 25-inch 240Hz monitors.
Man, when I load into scrims with this bad boy, I'm gonna feed so hard. And it's gonna be in perfect picture quality.
We are so excited to be partnering with Alienware for Season 8 of the SMITE Pro League. And the best part is, this VIP treatment, it's not just for the pros. You too can get the best possible SMITE experience. Just go to smitegame.com/Alienware and use code SMITEAW to get special discounts on some of Alienware's best products. Thanks again to Alienware. Make sure you're following them on Twitter and Instagram. That's at Alienware on both platforms. And you can join their community at alienwarearena.com.
And you're telling me an alien wore this?
Smite fans, and welcome back to day 3 of week 3 of the SMITE Pro League powered by Alienware. And I know that you guys just got a fantastic little insight as to some of the specs provided by all of the Alienware peripherals, but really can't stress it enough for you guys back at home. If you want to try and game like the pros, or even just watch the SPL in even better picture quality, you can head on over to smitegame.com/Alienware. Make sure to plug and use code SMITEAW to get yourself a nice little discount. Not only that, but you can keep up with all of the global action that Alienware is involved in, which includes giveaways and just checking out their stuff in general by heading on over to alienwarearena.com. And last but important to mention, you can also follow Alienware at Alienware on Instagram and Twitter. Can't say it enough and can't thank them enough for sponsoring the SMITE Pro League, but that's not the only thing that's happening today, believe it or not. We've actually got some fantastic sets coming in, and the one and only Gore Miser was going to be joining me throughout today's actions. And Gore, starting things off pretty hot here with the Titans into that Valkyries set, and what are your initial thoughts on this?
I'm just excited to see it. You get a really good hand dealt to you if you're the Titans. Like yesterday, admittedly, maybe not the way they would have wanted to beat the Leviathans, but a 2-0 against the Leviathans, as long as you just look at the score, it feels pretty good no matter what, right? And so you're already getting a good start from that. I think, again, despite extraneous circumstances, that was going to be a really competitive set. This Titans team has really, really started to close things up. And now you get to potentially continue that streak, really get yourselves off on a really good week 3 by going up against the Valkyries. I think this is a good week for them.
And it was definitely still a very strong showing, I believe, for the Titans, all things considered, even with Leviathans having to have their coach step in. But like I mentioned, the Leviathans versus the Titans, that was yesterday, but for today, our sets are going to include the Titans starting off against the Valhalla Valkyries. Valkyries still looking to try and find their first win of this second split, Gore. And after that, we've actually got the Jade Dragons versus the Olympus Bolts. Gord, I mean, you're already taking some big breaths here, so I'd imagine you got a lot on your mind for this one.
I'm rooting for the Valks in a way that's like I don't care who wins, but I want them to put a win on the board. Like, whether it's just an individual game, if they can push this to 3, that'd be really good for them, but I think getting a set win on there, like that big goose egg sitting in the win column's definitely not hurting them, and I think the last set win they had was in week 2 of Phase 1. They've had some individual games since then, but they haven't been able to get a real big set for themselves in quite some time. So it's one of those things where it's like I want them to be able to punch down and beat up somebody else. I just don't know that the Titans are going to give them an easy time to do it. They are already causing trouble for a lot of these top teams, so I think this is going to be one that is just a challenge for the Valkyries.
And it could be a really impactful set for the Titans because, as you guys saw in the standings, Titans sitting there in that 4th, 5th tiebreaker spot with the Jade Dragons. So Jade Dragons also a little bit of their work cut out for them. But more importantly, the Titans, if they want to keep moving up in those standings, a lot of that is going to come just from that team continuing to find their stride. And yesterday, we saw a lot of that action coming in hot from Paul, I believe, Gore.
Yeah.
And he's definitely been, I think, one of the centerpieces for this team, which is not necessarily expected given that it's not typically the mid laners that can be such a heavy driving force.
It feels like, I guess maybe since Worlds, like last year there were a lot of moments on PK where you got to see Paul. I mean, I guess really through his career he's had a lot of those moments where it's just like, man, this team would have sucked and lost if it hadn't been for whatever Paul had done. But there were moments at Worlds that I think really stood out and kind of opened your eyes that, you know what? If Paul can get onto a comfortable god, if Paul is going to be able to lock things down, that's enough to take a massive deficit, whether, something like unfortunately is going wrong for Scary D in the jungle. Paul can be the difference maker to balance things out there, and it's one of those things that's really been a benefit to the Titans. It took them a little bit to get warmed up at the beginning of the year, but once they hit that stride, I mean, they went on like a 4 or 5 set win streak. He's had a lot of flexibility as well, and it's just something that I think makes things very difficult. You're looking at someone that is going to lock in a Hebo and do really well with it, but also play Hell, also loves Raijin and Giannis and Morgan, and will play the team out. Like, there's just so much that you have to deal with from the mid lane here that it gives the Titans this veritable Swiss Army knife that is just going to be impossible to handle.
And it's the same fold for the teams that they play against, too, because a lot of times you'll notice teams definitely dedicating a good chunk of those initial 3 bans throughout the drafting phase towards Paul. So I think it says a lot when one player can cause that much focus to be directed his way.
And I think that's something that, I mean, granted, you're in mid, like everybody's walking through there, you're gonna get some attention to your way no matter what, but I think the fact that he has been a win condition for, well, look at the Knights last year, look at the Titans this year, he consistently puts himself in this position where it's like, if you can shut down Paul, you just increase your chances of winning. Unfortunately, there's still like 4 other people that you need to be worried about on this team.
Well, we know enough about the Titans, and we've been talking a little bit about Paul here. We've actually got Paul joining us for the pregame interview today.
Hello.
Paul, are you excited to get things going off against the Valhalla Valkyries today?
I am indeed excited to play today, yes.
Do you expect to get any more of that Tiamat there? Because I've been noticing a lot of Tiamat this weekend. Can't tell if it's just a recurring theme for this weekend, or what do you think's up with that?
Yeah, I think... You're not, bro.
Wait, is that Ronnie?
That was Matt. That was Aurora. Oh my god.
Why couldn't Aurora be this interactive with me on the interviews, dude?
Okay, to answer your question... What are you doing now, man? Now that's right. Yeah, I think I will get. I know I won't get Tiamat. I don't think I'll get Tiamat. She's just so OP. How can I get Tiamat?
Who's got the better upside down peekaboo for you, by the way? Do you think Aurora did it better or Scary?
They're both too good. I don't know. That's a tough one. What do you think?
I think I have to give it to Scary just because we saw a little bit more of the hair presence. I definitely respect the lock flow that was coming in from the team. Aurora, maybe, just not enough commitment, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Max went first, though, so That was respectable. Oh man.
Well, heads up play from your teammates, and I'm sure we'll see some heads up play from you guys throughout this set. Thank you so much for joining us, Paul, on the
Thank
pregame
you.
interview, and the rest of your team as well, your housemates.
Thanks.
All right, good luck with the set, man. Good stuff. Good times with the team. You can tell that they're all clearly in high spirits, though, Gore.
It's one of those things. It's weird to think of it this way. When you see a team that happy before a set and like that, like kind of jovial, you should be worried because they don't think you're a challenge, man. Like, they're not locked in. They're not worried about picks and mids. Like, they are having fun right now. And I think that's something that the Valkyries, like, it's a shot at them, right? Like, the Titans are feeling very confident is the way I would describe it.
Maybe not necessarily
It's not a disrespectful thing. It's just they're happy because they know that they're good.
The Titans definitely, I think, riding a little bit off that high from the Leviathan set yesterday, but the Valkyries are certainly still a team that, despite their standings and despite a lot of their set performances so far, this is very much still a formidable roster that largely, I think, just has to smooth out some of the kinks that we've been seeing in their gameplay, because I know at times it's definitely a very difficult situation for an entire team to be based on European ping. It's a very huge kind of... It's just a disadvantage in general, guys. Let's not chalk it up to anything else. But on that same note, there are definitely some more amateurish mistakes that we have seen coming through from this team time and time again throughout those sets, and I think part of that could definitely be due to frustration from the ping environment that they're currently surrounded in. I get that, but I would like to see the Valkyries here today kind of switch it up a little bit. We've been seeing a lot of the same type of compositions from these guys, and maybe they just feel the most confident on those picks, but I definitely think that this is a team that has more than enough individual talent to bring us something new today.
And look, if you're like Mifflin, you like taking bets. Like, this is a team, like you said, they're going for not just the same things constantly, but they're always hitting the same picks, right? I can guarantee if you're going to see a top pick from them, you're probably going to see Wukong. You're going to want to see this Neath because, admittedly, this is the best performance like Zeros has had on the Neath, more wins than I think most of the other gods combined that he's been able to lock in. But again, a wide god pool that we've gotten to see. 14 unique gods so far just this year from Zeros, which is great, but then you add in, like, well, Zhang Kui's played in there and he's 0-4. You've got his Giannis, he's 1-7 on that. It's just not been very successful for them despite mid flexibility, and I don't know that a lot of that is necessarily Zeros' playstyle, because as you can see, he's getting things done. I think it's just the way that the team has been melding together, and the best example of the way they meld together and why there's such a good argument for that is that when he plays this Neath, it was a while ago, but there was a Neath Kronos game, of all things, that they decided to lock in, and that was one of their best performances. I mean, Imolito's just popping off in the duo lane. You've got so much assistance coming from the Neath in that mid, to the point where there's nobody else is playing Neath, no one else is banning Neath, and yet for some reason you end up against the Valkyries, she all of a sudden skyrockets in terms of likelihood to show up in that red column.
And again, I think that all kind of just funnels back into the discussion that this is clearly still a team that has more than enough potential to perform. It's really just the level of competition being as steep as it is currently in Season 8 of the SMITE Pro League. And not only that, but when you factor in, like I said, some of the regional differences that are certainly taking place, I get how those can all be negative factors, but Valkyrie shouldn't give up on themselves. And I don't think that they have. I think that there's still plenty more for this team to push forward and like kind of power forward through. But today, I think it really starts with just being able to at least try and stretch this out to a 3-game series. I know that they're definitely capable of it. As far as an upset is concerned, Titans likely to still be the favorites here. But Gore, in your mind, what do you think needs to be the focal point here for Zeros when trying to deal with Paul in that mid lane?
Honestly, I think a lot of it is going to be in the bans, right? Like you said, we can't really let Paul have Tiamat. I probably don't want to see him get Hell. I feel like the Titans, if they get Hell in this matchup, probably run over them, but that comes in with a bearing in mind that Zeros likes to play Chang'e. Maybe they have a little bit of counter matchup potential. I think a lot of it's going to be in the draft phase that they can try to win against the Titans, but then a lot of it's going to transition to Zeros and how aggressive he's playing and how much he matches with Johnny.
Well, speaking of that drafting phase, we've actually got picks and bans for game number 1 coming in hot for you guys. I know you guys back at home been waiting for all this action to start taking place, and Titans actually going to be in that first pick position. And Gord, do you think that this is going to influence any of the decision-making from the Valkyries?
See, now I'm curious because every time I've seen them, I think whenever they're not first pick, they always go for like Sun Wukong for Ducky plus somebody else, and like Wukong's been pretty kind to Ducky. He's had successful lanes over there, but it feels like a lot of pressure pressure that they're putting onto a pick that, again, isn't really highly contested. I want to see them change it up and, again, go for the things that, yes, will make them look strong. Like, if you have to pick up your Neith, I don't care if it's something that nobody else is going for, but I think you need to find your essential carries in those top 2 spots right here, especially against the Titans. You can't really, warrant letting them flex 3 incredible power picks against you.
Well, right now, Titans, they look to shift their priority more towards some of those auto-attack base gods. Kali not going to make it through for Johnny here today. Neither will the Apollo. Seems as if a lot of teams just continue to place a lot of preference towards eliminating Johnny's god pool, Gore, or at least some of the aspects that we've seen from him throughout the season.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. The Titans are a team that can run the Loki, so they might lock it in first, but I wouldn't be surprised if this next ban was a Loki as well, right? If you're taking shots at Johnny, might as well continue taking shots at Johnny and try to isolate him. And unless you're willing to try and first pick it, there's no reason to try and let that through. So this is through and through just textbook. Hey, what's that guy good at? Like, their win condition, the reason they were such a problem at the beginning of Phase 1 was Johnny having good performances. If we can just isolate that and shut it down, we don't have anything to worry about.
Is it too much of a stretch of the imagination to think that Johnny might try to resort back to some of his more original comfort picks like the Ao Kuang, especially in response to a god like Artemis that has so much of that hyper carry potential, but a little bit of immobility that could be punishable?
I would love that, actually. I think the recent changes maybe open the door for him to start playing that Ao Kuang maybe a little more consistently. Things like the Bakasura we haven't seen in a little while. Granted, in Phase 1 it didn't work out too well for him when he played it, but I think there are some merits to playing around right now, especially let's face it, you're 0-4 in the standings right now. We just had a huge midseason patch. This is the best time to whip out the old junglers that you know you're really good with and see if you can make them work in this meta. And I think that that's something that they're going to be able to open the doors for and have that conversation about, because Johnny is, in my eyes, the essential member. If he carries like he did on those Loki games way back in Phase 1, that's enough to seal the deal for the Valkyries.
Oh, well, what are your initial thoughts, though, on this Gilgamesh Soul combination that the Valkyries have opted for in response to the Artemis first pick? And with a Fender to follow suit, Gore, feel as though Soul Gilgamesh still really aggressive. That Brutalize, though, can definitely stick to that Disapparate prior to hitting the immunity frame period and deal a decent chunk of damage.
I think this is going to be problematic is the way I would describe it. You've got Soul, like you said, a lot of self-survivability in terms of invincibility and also some self-healing. Gilgamesh has a lot of good peel and setup, but Fenrir has a lot of more setup than, you can kick him back with a drop kick, he's going to jump back in. And the thing that now is making it a lot more interesting is it's not the Gilgamesh for Johnny, which admittedly makes sense. They haven't really been going that route, but because the Tsukiyomi's been locked in, it changes things up for him.
You don't think there's any possibility that Tsuki could be for Ducky?
Yeah.
That's kind of where my mind was headed with it, because I guess it'd be an interesting dynamic either way. It's still a nice, aggressive sort of frontline/backline dynamic here for the Valkyries, and not only that, but I do think that it introduces a lot of really solid dive potential, which is going to be instrumental, I think, when trying to take down the likes of an Artemis and Raijin.
And it makes way more sense. So just to throw it out there, Tsukiyomi has been the most picked god for Johnny pretty much all year that they've been able to get their hands on, right? There were some periods where Loki was banned, they weren't able to get that done. His next one is Gilgamesh, so it's that conflicting, man, I kind of want to see you do your Tsukiyomi, but I know the Gilgamesh is going to be better for you. Plus, I think this is really heavy to mention, but Nika's performances on Tsukiyomi solo sells me on it more than anything else that you could possibly imagine. So if you can get a little bit of that from Ducky here, it's going to be enough to elevate the team.
Seeing all of this focus, though, it's solely based in Zero and Johnny's direction as far as the bans are concerned. Does that not... I think that should definitely encourage the Valkyries in terms of maybe their dual lane to have a really big resurgence period. I mean, we know that Emilito and Rafa are definitely more than capable of performing, Gore. You're looking at a couple of two-time world champions to boot, as well as just they dominated the Pro League for years. And to see them struggling as much as they have been now, again, it's we get that there's ping issues, but there are just instances where I definitely feel like we could see more from them. And do you think that this is one of those sets where we kind of need to, when you see so much focus being placed against their jungle and mid?
Yeah, I mean, that was a lot of the conversation last year too, right? It was specifically around Rafa. Emilito wasn't in the league at the time, and it was that conversation of man, this guy, we know this guy's great, and he has so many moments where you're that's the Rafa we expect to see be playing. And yet sometimes he just doesn't show up to have that. I think this Kuzenbo fits into his style, especially with the Soul, the Tsukuyomi, the Gilgamesh. Like, there's a lot of setup here. It does come down to now Emilito, though, on that Soul and how he's going to be able to perform. Is it going to be up to the standard that we need it to be able to help kind of not only control an Artemis, but match her late game output? Because that damage late game is going to be too much to handle if the Titans just get to coast into it.
The infamous Barra combo of Stellar Burst into the Supernova. You know, that's a time mold class. Patented Barracuda with that one, but Emilito's going to try his best to see if he can make it happen. Either way, though, Gore, the compositions aside, I can't help but notice Ares, Fenrir, Hercules. If that doesn't scream beads burn off cooldown, I don't know what will.
Yeah, and look, there's Soul who has some immunity in there. Like everybody else, like you have a leap if you're Gilgamesh, but good luck getting it off. There's so much to lock you down. Same thing for anybody that has that escape. Same thing for Merlin, right? If the chains are able to connect with you off a stun from Fenrir or a knockup from Hercules, once they join in the middle of a team fight, I just don't know that you're going to be able to escape the way you want to. It's a great team that could shut down something like an Artemis, but you've got the Artemis on your team. You're just going to be able to protect her because no one's going to be able to jump back there to get to her.
And getting a little bit more specific here even, the Ares versus Kuzenbo, as far as that support gameplay is concerned, who would you imagine to get the better end of that exchange?
I mean, it has to be Ares, right? As long as you're hitting, and there's the big caveat, as long as you're hitting your chains at the very start. There's the asterisk. But other than that, what's Kuzenbo going to do? Like, he's going to stand and stare at you menacingly, throw some nanes? Like, he's not really going to have, I think, the presence that he wants. And so there's a little bit on Aurora to perform, but guess what? It's Aurora, one of the better support players we've seen over the last few years. He's going to be consistent with it. This Ares has become something that I think that not just the Titans, but a few teams have been going to a little more consistently recently. And so I think this is going to be a really good duo lane for them. If Raffer can get some picks early on just to get Emilito rolling as well as himself, that could open it up to be a wider conversation. But as long as that Ares, as long as his cooldowns line up, he's not worried too much.
And do you think that the Hercules, I'm assuming that that's intended for Benji here. We
I
saw
hope so.
how controlling he was and how frequently he was looking to rotate out of that soul lane with the mana early on. Do you expect that to kind of maintain as a theme for Benji here today now that he's got this Hercules?
I wouldn't be surprised to see it. Like, I think Tsukuyomi might actually enable it a little bit more. Like, you're a little worried about the assassin maybe like the first few levels, like, oh man, I'm not completely tanky just yet. But I do think that you're going to be able to join those fights early on. You know how big of a threat that Johnny's going to be. You know where he is going to be active. It's going to be mid and solo. So if you can find those fights on your terms, having to deal with a Gilgamesh Tsukuyomi doesn't seem like a really fun thing to do on your own. So maybe Fenrir will come and help you out, but being able to rotate to mid, shut down Zeros, or help shut down Zeros a little bit more often, I think we're going to see this Hercules be at least willing to leave the lane. He's not going to have too much to worry about in terms of lane pressure after like level 5.
It's just a ton of early game presence in general from the whole of the Titans draft composition here. And I think that the Valkyries are definitely going to have their work cut out for them as far as the laning phases are concerned, but that's not to say that they don't have a few win conditions of their own, Gore. I definitely think that they have some really strong objective burn if they're able to pull it through. But for right now, we've got game number 1 coming up, and we have J-Mac Tucker and Aggro on the cast for you guys.
Thank you, Taco and Gore. Like I said, Jim and Aggro here to bring you the Titans and the Valkyries game number 1. And if I'm looking at these two compositions, Aggro, probably the first thought that comes to mind, especially for the Titans team, is this is a W key team.
Yeah, they've got a lot of CC, a good amount of mobility as well between the Hercules and the Raijin and the Fenrir. You know, you're not seeing a whole lot of mobility out of Ares and Artemis in particular, but I definitely like their odds if they can get an early lead. They keep pressure on you very well. And they have put a lot of pressure in particular on purification beads. And that's why you see the Valkyries already pick up 4 sets of beads, Raffer being the only one that doesn't have them.
And I think it's kind of necessary. I mean, you got the Hercules, you got the Fenrir, and you got the Ares onto it. And that's not even counting what Cyclone Spin can also do on the Artemis. I think you hit it perfectly on with that one, is you need beads. I would honestly say Raffer probably even needs the beads.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, he's going to hit level 5, have that Watery Grave available, but it's just that there's so many relics you want to get as a support right now. He goes with the Blink and uses it to group this wave early, but he wants Sunder, he wants more, but Ducky's just dead to Benji. I don't know what happened over here, but that Benji just walked at him and used that Fighter's Mask start in order to get that first blood.
Benji getting on the board quickly for the Titans, and keeping Ducky down is probably one of their better priorities when it comes to the in-game. It seems that the Titans have done their homework and done the drafting phase to keep Johnny and Zeros a little bit more at bay as far as the game goes. So first blood strikes for the Titans.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't see the way that Benji had started. Maybe he started in a way that let him spike to 2 earlier than Ducky, but Ducky looked like he had a pretty hefty wave behind him as he was dying. So interested in seeing what happens here. Her Benji starts with a 2, which is what you would expect for the Hercules, but Ducky just ends up taking a little bit too much minion aggro, and no, he doesn't combo him or anything. He just stat checks him on that fight, and that's what Hercules does better than just about anyone else early on, is just outright trade without even having to worry about hitting his buttons optimally.
Yeah, he just gets that first minion wave advantage onto it, able to hit level 2 instantly, just driving strike right at him. Like we said, I mean, this is a W key team, and there's probably no solo laner better at it than a Hercules.
Yeah, that's a really, really good start now for him, because when you start ahead with this Fighter's Mask start, it feels really strong, because you know that you're setting yourself up for a good late game, because you're giving yourself starter item flexibility on the upgrade. And if you know that the enemy solo laner has started Fighter's Mask as well, that they aren't going to be spiking really soon, that's a little bit more of a late game option like I was just talking about, because it gives you more starter item flexibility, and you know that you've been accelerated towards that, whereas the enemy has not. So I like this idea. Send Scary D over, try and keep Ducky down, because if they get another kill on him early, he might just be out of the game.
Johnny's making a rotation over as well. Scary going to start on the blue buff, a leap in by Ducky to try and stop down Scary. It's going to be a nice pluck there, but that's not going to stop the drop kick afterward. Ducky returns fire, taking down the jungler, but now still with the soul lane here, Johnny and Ducky can turn this one onto Benji. There's no reason they can't kill him here, but maybe just Benji turns it on his own and takes down Johnny.
Yeah, but he's out of mana. Ducky should have the drop kick coming up soon. Gets a stun, but Benji's beads were up and ready, so he walks out. It's 1 for 1, but a little bit of a miscommunication on how they want to play that. I think Ducky goes over at the perfect time, right as Johnny arrives. They use their buttons as Scary is trying to secure the blue buff, so that they put him in a position where he's got to decide between dodging these skills or sticking true and trying to secure the blue. Scary tries to secure the blue, doesn't quite do it, and ends up using his beads and dying for first blood anyways. Feels good for the Titans, at least, that Benji's able to get the return kill and make sure that he continues to get this lead.
Yeah, and I think a good bait for them as well by getting that Unchained out of him right at the start of the fight, so he was already down 1 ability going into a great rotation there by Johnny and good communication with Ducky to get themselves on the board finally, but a return kill on the back end of it is not the end of the world for them. Still down about 500 gold, 400 gold or so. That's their first blood bounty going the way of the Titans. Looking at the starts here, we do see both mid laners this time going for that Vampiric Shroud.
Yeah, it's kind of the default option, it feels like these days. Still a little bit of Santa time from time to time, but especially when you've got a physical jungler and solo laner to go up against, that physical protection just becomes so valuable.
That's going to be the supernova out of Emilitu. He's going to be forced to go back to the tower, and Johnny makes another rotation over to the solo lane, able to pick up Benji under the tower with the help of Ducky there. So aggression into the dual lane leads to a nice gank in solo.
And I like how active Johnny's being on the map. You know, it's 4 minutes in. We've seen him in 2 scraps already. And that's a little bit more active than I think the Valkyries oftentimes are. There's a team that oftentimes just kind of waits around until the later stages of the game where they feel like their experience will take over and their shot calling between Zeros and Raffer and Emilito and Ducky, you know, some veterans alongside the rookie Johnny. Letting Johnny get involved early, I think, is just, you know, it lets him get his confidence up and get himself in the game and not have to wait until, hey, our first fight I'm coming into is down. I'm down so much gold. You know, I've got to make a perfect play. This is an easy execution. It's a good initiation by Ducky. Benji is completely out of mana. He's too greedy for staying that long, and they punish him accordingly. And now Johnny has gotten some engagements under his belt less than 5 minutes in. They're looking for him to keep that kind of momentum rolling. I want to see him stay active on the map.
And it just feels like all that momentum that Benji built for himself in the solo lane is kind of falling apart now. He's died only 1 time on it, has the 2 kills to his name, but Johnny putting that pressure there, and I think this is one of the first times we're seeing Johnny really comfortable in the jungle, and I'd say probably the last 3 sets that he's played here, he's been trying to focus so much on those auto-attack based junglers. Just give him the Tsukiyomi. It's almost like a Loki, not quite a Loki, but it's almost like a Loki.
Yeah, you get into the back line. You've got some good damage in the late game, similar in that regard for sure. I think it's just that the Valkyries have been trying to go with these more late game scaling compositions, and then they don't get there. They're blown out a little bit too early. Teams are too good at invading their buffs and being active around their side of the jungle. Giving him a pick like the Tsukiyomi that lets him actually fight makes way more sense.
Well, they're going to go right onto Scary D. No Ragnarok form, drop kicked against the wall, and another pick on the board for Johnny. Great rotation yet again from Ducky.
And this is not a great start for Scary now. He's level 6, 0-2, has really been caught both times on the enemy side of the jungle. That time he doesn't have solo lane pressure, which you would want to have if you're going to be going for those invades. Ducky is able to get there first because there isn't quite enough solo lane pressure, or he's willing to give up a little bit in order to make sure that he's there. And once again, Johnny finds the kill, and now you're starting to see a bit of a lead develop over there, not just for Johnny, but for Ducky as well, because of all the involvement that he's had in these 3 kills. He's got a kill and the 2 assists underneath his belt. So even though Benji got off to that great lead and still holds a pretty good net worth lead of 300 gold, XP is in the other way.
Oh, Raffer's going to fall down very quickly. Supernova expended as well. That's going to force the to separate out of Emily2, but Cyclone able to pick up a kill and finally get some other part of the map on the board with their first kill. All that action has been in that jungle and solo.
Yeah, a little bit of a greedy play there from Raf. Doesn't use the Watery Grave, had it up, ready to go, gets trapped, eats the whole duration of the trap and just getting auto-attacked, and then gets bored. I think he's probably right to hold on to the ultimate after the boar goes out, because even if he's CC immune, Cyclone had the 3-up, and that would have killed him anyways, even through the CC immunity. He just got to give a little bit more respect to the duration of that trap, how long it lasts, and how much extra damage Cyclone gets for that Artemis passive during that time.
It feels like an eternity when you're stepped inside that trap, and you get, you accidentally step in one and say, "Oh man, whatever, no big deal," and then they catch you on that, and they're able to get another one out there because that one was sitting forever ago. I mean, it's probably the worst nightmare getting stuck in not just one, but maybe even a second one later down.
Exactly, and he's just got to give a little bit more respect to where Cyclone is in the build. He's got the Ichval finished. That's kind of the power spike already these days for ADCs. They're spiking pretty darn early with this build, so you have to give them some more respect. That's a lot more power than what you would see if Cyclone were stacking a Transcendence or a Devos like they have been for the last, I don't know, 5-6 years. It's been the meta of stacking an ADC. This is really the first time that it hasn't been in a long time, and so you have to kind of redo some math on when you're going to be able to go over there and fight and how strong those ADCs are going to be.
And I think kind of, touching on that one, this is the first time Ichval has kind of come back into the meta, even when the mage ADCs did have their time in the spotlight. Is this new kind of Ichval start, would it just be better to throw these souls over in the mid lane because they don't really get that same kind of power spike?
No, I think Soul ADC is still okay. I mean, you've got Vamp Shroud, which is really good in these 1v1 matchups because of the sustain that it gives you and that physical protection while still not dipping you too low on power. I don't mind Soul and ADC. I think Soul is still strong. And you look at the farm level that someone like a Merlin can get, and you really love to give that over to the traditional mage at the exact same time. I think Soul is just good enough that I'm kind of down to put her both places.
Well, Emily2 is under fire by Cyclone. Supernova and Desaparate expended to get Emil out of danger, and he loses quite a hefty chunk of his life. Raph are going to rotate over, but Cyclone will make sure to clear the ward out, so he'll spot him out.
Still, this is not a horrible place to be if you're the Valkyries. I think their composition scales pretty well into the mid to late game. I think the Tartarus Titans composition does pretty much equally, but the Valkyries are in a position now where their front line has been stabilized. Ducky's been able to take more fights up against Benji and be able to hold his own. Johnny is still in the lead right now over where Scary D is. And Valkyries are the one who got that initial Greater Scorpion. Still down a little bit of gold overall, but I want to see them start to play around Johnny. Don't take fights where Johnny is not. He's your guy. He's already got a fully stacked Transcendence, so he did go for a stacking option that's a little bit slower, but it's paid off. He hasn't gotten punished for going this start, and now he's in a position where he just got a huge power item with CDR for not that much gold for how much power it's giving you, and you didn't really fall off during that time. So especially once he finishes off this flat pen item, which I would hope would be a Brawler's Beat Stick in order to try and take down some of this healing for Benji, I think Johnny is in a great position to try and carry this game.
And it just feels like Scary D's kind of been inactive on the map. He's made the one attempt at the blue buff, and then ever since then, we really haven't seen anything out of Scary. You could kind of see it earlier reflected in the player damage, just sitting barely over 200 player damage on this Fenrir now 10+ minutes into the game.
And he's down a good 700 gold or so in this matchup, so definitely not an easy position to be in right now if you're Scary D. But that's the thing about Fenrir, is that even when you fall behind, your ult is really good. I mean, you just find opportunities with that ultimate pretty much constantly, so you can still make an impact in these fights. It's just not going to be as easy for him to 1v1 Johnny or 1v1 Emilito like you would want him to on this Fenrir.
And kind of with that thought onto it, does that kind of, because he's falling behind, does he need to continue down this line of damage, stick to more bruiser, or does he just kind of start tanking out at this point?
I think that most of the time you want to be going hybrid on Fenrir jungle. You just never get the chance to go full damage and live. In the late game, Brutalize just becomes a mobility tool at that point most of the time anyways, but particularly when you're full damage, you don't get to leverage it super well. So I think I would like to see him go more hybrid from here.
Well, Roar's going to be the only one to try and stop this Gold Fury, although it is just a lone Ares. He's going to go for the no escape and not pull a single person in, pop 3 sets of beads and the Watery Grave.
Honestly, I think that if you would ask Aurora, will you trade a Gold Fury for 3 beads and an ult? He might say yes. 3 beads is so valuable, especially on a character like Merlin that does not have on-demand CC immunity, against a character like Sol who just used her ultimate. Now the Titans can't just waste this window, though. You know, you lost the Gold Fury from a good grouping. You got a speed buff invade on the other side, so you did punish Johnny for that engage. But we got to go now. Let's group up. Let's do the Greater Scorpion on the fire side. You would love to have put that down already, so you could put pressure on something like a Pyromancer instead. It's a little bit more valuable. But let's group in mid. Let's fight around, Scary. It's time to get active. There's lots of people that you just kill for free at this point. Merlin just dies to a Fenrir when he doesn't have beads. Scary should be looking to play aggressive from now on.
Well, let's see if he can finally make his presence known on the map. All the while, Cyclone Spin once again dropping that Draugr on the dual lane side just to give himself a little bit of global XP and gold for it, make towers a little bit less safe to dive under, though. Even this early on, towers really don't seem to do too much to some of these front lines, especially because they're usually not diving at 20% health. They're going for the full health dives, and Malitu is going to lose a nice little bit of chunk there of his health. Cyclone Spin now on the back end of this fight. Raffer going to get the Sumo Slam to force the beads out, and that'll be a quick escape for the Hunter.
Yeah, not a bad trade, though, for Cyclone. I mean, he loses beads ult, which is a lot on someone like Artemis, because that's your only forms of safety. But Raffer uses his Blink ultimate. Emilito uses his Aegis. Fairly okay trade, I would say, there between the two.
Sunder used onto Benji. Scary D rotating through. Gonna get the Winter Samash out. Brutalize on top of Ducky. Boulder comes out, and one more basic assault is necessary.
Nice.
Heroic leaps right in place, and Scary D will put him in the grave and get himself on the board.
That was a little scary for a second there. Really good turnaround attempt there by Ducky. I think he had another Sunder charge that he put onto Scary right before he drop kicked him, which is exactly what you need to do in that situation. So nearly was able to turn it around. That is a free kill basically every time once Ducky loses the beads, and Benji got him, so Scary ends up holding on to the ultimate, but clock's still ticking on these beads, J-Mac. 20 seconds, and all 3 sets of those beads are up, and the Titans didn't get anything they couldn't have gotten anyways. That kill on the Ducky happens whether or not Aurora gets 3 sets of beads with this composition around that Gold Fury. That it was completely unimpacted. A little disappointed for the Titans. They don't find a better window there.
Yeah, I mean, Ducky was the only one who didn't lose his beads at the Gold Fury. In fact, he was fighting on the right-hand side because of it. So, yeah, like you said, they don't lose anything off of that. That gank happens regardless of the fact. And because of that, all 3 beads are back up for the carries and the jungler. Johnny's going to have that one for the next fight. Still holds that XP lead. Even though the gold is kind of pushing in favor of the Titans, we're seeing that XP lead kind of tinker back and forth between them, but it still looks like it's also kind of swinging a little bit more in favor of the Titans.
The Valkyries, I mean, the first 4 minutes, I'm saying how much I like Johnny's willingness to defend, and he's there on time. He's being aggressive on the gank and setting up with Ducky. They're in a good position. And now we're going to farm for 15 minutes. And it's just more of the same from the Valkyries, where I feel like they're just waiting until the later stages when they had an opportunity to be more aggressive around Scary's jungle. Scary was down a full level and a half on a Fenrir pick that, can get bullied a little bit when behind. Don't think that the Valkyries really did enough with that early lead. I mean, the fact that they're down in gold overall, despite getting the Gold Fury, really tells that story. But overall, I'm a little disappointed with the positioning of the Valkyries composition now with where the Titans are in this game, because Johnny and the rest of the Valkyries had a real opportunity to expand this lead instead of just letting it stagnate.
Is this just the classic Paul play? Just go for a defensive item
Yes.
early up into the build?
Yep, he loves it. He loves trying to get, because he knows he's going to get dove because he's Paul, and he will continue to get dove because he's Paul, but he wants to survive in those moments. I think that I'd prefer the damage, but that's what Paul likes to do.
Well, Scary's going to take about half his health in the process of it. Tycho drums come out, and Johnny with the ultimate will be sure to take him down. Now into the back line, Paul is under fire by Emily2. He's going to get the Thunder Crash over the wall, but Emil is on the full chase, and Aurora is caught out in the midst of it. Double kill on the board for Johnny, and Emil trying to take down Paul under the tower. Aegis comes through to save his life for the meanwhile, I should say, as Ducky takes down Paul under the tower.
A great rotation coming from Emilito. Benji looks to get involved still because he still has that boulder, and he's going to get a good one coming off the wall, but it's still a 1v4.
And he might still make it out of here. Ducky doesn't have any mana. Emil is very low on health. Zeros on the wrong side of the tower. So it looks like Benji makes it out for now, but that's a 3-for-none trade in favor of the Valkyries.
Just good counter engage, not the cleanest engagement there from Scary D, who just didn't have the defense quite yet. He just now gets the Pestilence before he was just sitting
Oh no,
on that
this is
Talisman
bad. This is so bad. Cyclone just walks up. Not only does he steal the Pyromancer, gets the kill on top of that one. Huge rotation from the Hunter.
Beautiful timing to come in. I mean, he's late on the rotation in comparison to Emilito, and that's what lets them pull the Gold Fear or get the kills 3-0. But now the Valkyries take a little bit too long. They try to dive Benji. Benji wastes their time very effectively, and they get a tier 1, and that's it, because the Titans are going to get this Fire Giant. I don't think anyone's going to get here in time because of Cyclone's well-timed rotation in and the Valkyries' lack of focus on what they needed to do at the right moment.
They got to be quick on this one. Johnny still has a chance to steal as
Maybe
well
not.
as Raffer. Fire Giant still going through. Boulder comes out. It's off the mark. The Valkyries steal it away. Aurora going to pull only Raffer in, but he takes down Benji before he gets yanked back into the clutches of the Ares. Emil pushing forward, Paul up into the Tycho drum. Ducky finds Scary D. Chain comes out. Emilito likely going to fall from the damage of the chains, but his lifesteal is good enough to keep him alive, and Ducky picks up the double.
Man, I thought it was going to be over. I thought the Titans had the damage, and so did they, but the Valkyries are able to come back right on time. Great drop kick.
No.
Gets both backliners, but no one dives in. Raffer and Ducky a little bit too scared to dive the tier 2, but they don't need to force it because they got 3 members with a Fire Giant. It was Emilito over the wall with the Supernova that ended up stealing it away. And now this is where their objective damage through the soul is going to really shine, because Emilito's got the FG, he's got the Telkine's ring done. They've got plenty of time in order to strip away some of these structures. A huge play there from the Valkyries.
Tier 2 tower still manages to stand, not for much longer. All it'll take this one little sneeze to drop that one down, but Emilito chunking for already, what was that, 162 per auto that he was swinging onto that one, and he's only 3 items deep into the build.
Yeah, very, very good objective damage between the Fire Giant and just Soul passive. You're going to really do a lot of the heavy lifting there. The Valkyries have got to reset again. I mean, Johnny's overdoing blue buff while Primal Fury's up. You've got a Fire Giant ticking away. This is where you got to group. You've got to make some things happen. Now, if you're the Valkyries, it's not Fire Giant, great, we were able to stall out the game. It's Fire Giant, great, we can take control of the game.
Scary D jumping into the fray of it. A push onto Ducky. Primal Fury being ulted by the mid laner, but nobody's going to secure it. In fact, they're going to leash it away. Aurora going to try and pull in 2, and he manages to grab both of the frontliners. Ducky down, Rafford down, and now it's a sticky situation here for the Valkyries. Emilito able to pick up a quick double kill, or at least one there. Scary picks up the double. Paul grabs one of his own, and now it's only Zeros, the only one without the Fire Giant for his team. Might not be making out of here either as Benji blinks under the tower.
Benji can tank this for as long as he pleases. Zero still has both relics, and I feel like he's got to use them if he wants to have any chance of surviving. Flicker comes up right on time, and I believe that will get him out of danger. But that's the exact sort of thing that the Valkyries just, they get themselves in these good positions. They stole Fire Giant, they've got it on 3 members, they're healthy, and then they split up to farm. Instead of grouping as 5, they try and get this tier 2 in mid. It doesn't quite go well, and then they spread out to farm instead of grouping up around this Primal Fury, instead of resetting to get to the Primal Fury in time. And they end up really squandering this Fire Giant opportunity that they had. Just a little bit of lack of focus there in the right moment ends up really costing them what could have been a great opportunity. Now, all of that being said, they're still in a good position in this game. You know, it's not like that was their only opportunity in this match, but again, just a little bit of a overall map mistake there from the Valkyries.
Yeah, it still sits dead even now on the experience and gold for these two teams, but it's been a roller coaster of a game. You see the Valkyries off to a lead, and then they give it back over to Titans, and then Valkyries start kind of bringing it back up, and then the Titans steal it back away. Fire Giant stolen away, huge for them. And what do? They botch a fight over at the Fury, and now it's back to just dead even.
And look, I think the Valkyries do drop the ball in that moment, but I want to give a ton of credit to the Titans at the exact same time. They recognize the Valkyries aren't grouping properly, and they're the ones, they're not deterred because they lost fire. They're not shying away from these fights. They're not just backing up and saying, okay, this is what I think the Valkyries will do, and playing around that. They're playing around what the Valkyries are actually showing them, and they're being aggressive anyways. They're stepping up. They're the ones first to the objective. They're pulling the objective themselves. I love that initiative the Titans have shown, and I think that's been a huge difference for them from the beginning of the year until now, is that, you know, at the beginning of the year, something like that FG steal happens. I think that you see the Titans sitting underneath their tier 2s waiting for the Valkyries to siege them. Instead, now, they're seeing what's actually happening on the map, and they're reacting accordingly. They're not just assuming what's going on. They're really taking in that information nicely. And I like the way that they were able to play aggressive and force the hand of the Valkyries.
And now they're able to aggressively set themselves up for the Pyromancer. That one will get taken down, no problem. I say that as 3 people basically walked away on it for a moment there. So they get another objective on the board, push themselves to a 3,000 gold lead, and set themselves up nicely for the next Fire Giant Obsidian Shard finish for Paul, as well as the Sacrificial Shroud. Of those 2 shrouds here, I think that's probably the premier one you want on that mid lane Burst Mage.
Yeah, anytime you're getting percent damage increases, sign me up. And that's exactly what that Sacrificial Shroud will give you. Not a lot of lifesteal in the build, and by a lot, I mean any. There for Paul. So that actual HP cost, you're going to see it. I mean, look, he just cleared mid-wave, and it's not a lot, but you see a little sliver of HP missing there on his screen. He's going to need some lifesteal, I think, in order to counteract it.
A lot of damage thrown through. Scary under half. He's going to be forced to jump away from the drop kick, but Benji's the one caught on the middle of 5. He's down to half health. Rapper with the Watery Grave to cause some zoning. Aurora not going to pull anybody with the Unchained. Rapper going to get picked back up by the Ragnarok and thrown into the midst of the team. Cyclone going to be the one to pick him up. And now Scary D has to retreat.
Really good 3 from Cyclone over the wall. Got great poke on the entirety of the team. And that kind of leaves Ducky back now to try and contend with this. Good Thunder Crash in. Benji just controlling space once again on this Hercules. He has looked nearly unstoppable on this pick as of late. Loved that pick for him. And now, even though that looked like a potential good fight for the Valkyries, it's the Titans standing 5 strong, pulling FG.
Well, Paul is on the backside of it, not fully committing to it. Like you said, that Sacrificial Shroud stealing away a little bit of his health every time he casts. Doesn't want to be too low, with Johnny still waiting in the wings, as well as Xerus and Emil, the full damage dealers of them. Emil gets pushed against the wall. FG goes the ways of the Titans. Johnny dives in with the Piercing Moonlight, but not going to find anybody. Meanwhile, Scary's going to find Emilito on the backside.
Love that play there from Scary and from Benji. They play it beautifully on those dives in, and the Valkyries just get punished. The Titans willing to coin flip that FG a little bit. That was risky, but they're in a position to know that they can punish the Valkyries even if they lose the FG. You know, they obviously want the Fire Giant. They're going to be able to do a lot more with it. But even if they lose it in that scenario, Johnny is still likely dying. Emilito is still likely dying on the surge forward after the fact. So now that they got FG, in addition to taking a good fight, they've got the base to take.
Watery Grave in by Rapper to zone them away. Ducky somehow was able to get out for only a moment before Scaredy chases him into the back line. Rapper now on full retreat from 3. Right side Phoenix still stands, but I can't quite say the same for Rapper. He is under siege in his own tier 2 tower. Paul and Aurora will make sure to chase him out and take him down.
Sunder is good onto Aurora, and that's going to deal some damage, but Aurora is able to get out. One more tower shot would have done it, but he's able to survive as Cyclone and Scary whittle down that right side Phoenix. The base now open on the Valkyrie side of the map, and just a good initiation there from the Titans. You see Benji and Scary deep in the enemy backline. They force Ducky to ult from a longer distance than he wants to. They force Raffer to lead with Watery Grave, which he really would prefer to save for things like that Caledonian Boar. You want to save that CC immunity when you can, but doesn't really have a choice but to go in with it right first and foremost. And the Titans just have this staunch front line, and they're protecting Cyclone really well in this game. 5-1-6 for an Artemis up against a Gilgamesh and a Tsukiyomi that they can get into the back line really easily, and something like a Kuzenbo as well. Cyclone has been able to really free cast the vast majority of this game because of how much frontline work Aurora and Benji and Scary have been able to do for him.
And it just felt like Ducky couldn't do anything for them on that defense. It felt like the moment that he even thought about walking in, he was already having to leap away with not even 5% health at the back end of it.
Plenty of damage right now. And now Paul does pick up some lifesteal with that soul gem, so that's going to offset that health cost more often than not. As long as you're actually landing your buttons, you'll be able to lifesteal them up pretty effectively. And with the FG sustain, that doesn't hurt you too much either. That'll cover you on that front as well. So now you're in a position where that downside of Sacrificial Shroud doesn't really feel like it's there, with all of the upside still available to you.
They're getting set up now for this mid lane Phoenix Siege. The right side, so those minions pushed all the way. They need someone to defend that soon. Benji gets pushed into the back. Emil goes forward with the Supernova, but not going to find much on top of about quarter of Cyclone's health. The no escape comes through from the Guardian, but unfortunately Ducky's going to be the one that goes down. Rapper not going to make it through either, as well as Emilitu. He will fall down. Paul has to use his beads, and they're sieging down to take out Johnny, who's forced to use that Piercing Moonlight.
Benji still on the chase. Oh, that Earthbreaker just a little bit wide left, but they still want the kill onto the Tsukiyomi. Looks like they're playing for the kills before they take the Titan.
Oh, Titan's going to go down very quickly for them, able to clean this one up in about 27 minutes for these players. Titans, it looked a little shaky at first for them, but aggro, in the end of it all, they're able to bring in the first game for themselves.
Yeah, look, the Valkyries did a lot of things really well in that match. I mean, obviously that Fire Giant steal was really pivotal for them. They got into a really good position after that. I just think the Titans didn't give up their pressure. They were always the ones that were feeling like they were in control. Even the kills that Johnny gets on that blue buff that I like, on that solo gank, you know, the solo gank is more Benji overstaying, but it's because of pressure from the Titans. They don't let up even after they lose the FG, and they force the Valkyries to continue to be in the correct spot at the correct time, and there was just one opportunity where the Valkyries missed it.
And with that, the Valkyries do fall in their first game. They looked a lot better than they have recently, but they're going to have to clean up their act in game number 2. We'll come back after the break to the desk.
Welcome back to the SMITE Pro League powered by Alienware. And before we get into talking about all the exciting action from this Game 1 to the Tartarus Titans and the Valhalla Valkyries, just want to take a second and remind you guys that the SPL is not all about your viewing pleasure, and you can continue to show your growing support for the league by heading on over to shop.smiteproleague.com and make sure to pick up some of this primo and elite SMITE Pro League gear catered specifically to showing off just how big of a fan you guys really are of the SMITE Pro League as a whole. So that's going to be shop.smiteproleague.com one more time if you guys want to make sure to support the league and everything that's there to follow. There's also some other cool little knickknacks on the site that you guys might be interested in. But getting back to it, Gore, game number 1, Valhalla Valkyries, certainly made, I think, their presence known, just not enough to actually keep this one, bring it back home.
Yeah, I was actually surprised. Like, we had the conversation. Like, I think if Ducky takes Gilgamesh or Tsukiyomi, has a good time. Maybe not the first blood. We'll get to that a little bit later. Same thing for Johnny. And they both showed up. They played really well and were able to keep pace with what the Titans were doing, to the point where we're seeing steals both for the Titans and against the Titans at certain points. I think it opens up a lot of the fun conversation that the Valkyries are here to contend. In fact, Melidu, of all people, being the person who is able to strip away the Fire Giant. Now, things were very unfortunate with Otaku because it felt like every good came with a price afterward, and a lot of it would be that you're finally able to set things up, you feel confident, you feel like you're winning, or especially here in this Fire Giant fight, and they get it onto 3 members, but they don't keep it that long, and they lose almost everybody right afterward.
I think the main issue that I noticed with the Valhalla Valkyries is that they just didn't really have a response for Cyclone. He was an absolute menace on the Artemis, and I know we're showcasing this Benji level 1-2 kill one more time.
Look, that's just getting hurt.
It's just pain.
That's just textbook.
It's just pain, man, the whole way through. But that's what Hercules is widely known for, is just how much of a lane bully he can be, and wasn't just a lane bully in the team fights. Like I mentioned, Cyclone really just free casting to his heart's content here with the Artemis. Just so many resources being expended from the Valhalla Valkyries in order to try and take down the likes of Scary, the likes of Benji, the likes of Roar, and nothing was ever left in the tank to actually deal with the main issue in my mind, and that was Cyclone.
Yeah, I mean, look at that, 28,000 damage. He did double the highest, almost double the highest, double Johnny's damage at the minimum. It's 11,000 more damage than what Ducky was able to put out. So, I mean, he put a lot into that Artemis. And like you said, it kind of felt like the Titans were playing a 4-protect-1. Like, Cyclone Spin didn't have any worries because he had so many bodies for control and for peel around him that there was never a true threat to the Artemis.
And I think that that's also something that the Valhalla Valkyries are likely to keep in mind for game number 2, specifically in the drafts. I don't know if it'll necessarily funnel into a Artemis ban in that initial first 3. Would imagine that you'd still need to commit at least a couple of those bans towards Paul's God Pool, as we've seen, but at the very least, I think it's worth consideration for the Valhalla Valkyries, given the fact that Titans did first pick this Artemis. Maybe it might be worth it, but it's definitely a risky situation.
Yeah, I mean, locking it in, like, over the Gilgamesh, over, well, literally anything, over Raijin, over Giannis, over anything that we've seen first pick, save for the Tiamat, which was banned away. The fact that you're willing to go Artemis that early showcases maybe a lot about what you're thinking about this game and how well that you know that Cyclone's going to be under control, and maybe just controlling specifically the duo lane. Cyclone wasn't worried about it to begin with, and he wasn't worried about it at the end. I mean, he was 5-1-8.
Or if you know that the Titans have this preference to take that Artemis first, don't opt to ban it right away. Instead, maybe just look for stronger response picks that are better at handling and controlling that Artemis and the space that she was able to work with, because we did see a lot of frontline being provided by the likes of Scary, Benji, and Roar, but we've been seeing a lot of success for teams lately, Gore, within the past couple of weeks on those Odin takes, and we don't necessarily have to withhold that Odin pick for later on in composition. Let the Titans have the Artemis, and maybe this is where we could see some of that flexibility that I think we all know the Valkyries are capable of actually shine through.
That's the fun part, right? When you get Odin, you go the Morgan. We know Zeros has a good Morgan in his back pocket, so you all of a sudden stack those up. It makes things a lot more difficult for somebody that doesn't have a leap or a dash. Like, look, you pop your 2, your Artemis, you're going to zoom a little faster. You have a lot of CC in your kit to help you kind of get away, but there's a certain point where you're just not going to be able to get away. Phantom becomes part of the conversation, but they just decide to jump over that entirely and ban it out. And I think it's one of those double-edged blades, right? Like, you ban that out, now Ymir or Yamoja are going to be available for the other team, and that just doesn't feel good. or you let it through and then you have to change your entire draft and really hope that Zeros and Ducky have a great game to shut it down.
Gilgamesh, Amir, Fenrir, all three really strong options and flex pick opportunities for the Tartarus Titans if they decide to go in either of those directions, but it's actually going to be the Loki that they're going to opt to take away. I think this is a smart look for the Titans, though, given the fact that with that Kuzenbo having actually been their third ban means that they're still keeping their eye on Johnny, just a little bit more directly here.
And it goes back to the conversation we were having in Game 1, right? I mean, almost exactly that, where it's just like, well, hey, do you need to ban Loki here? Probably not. You just have to first pick it. You don't want Johnny to get it because that's where the Valkyries were winning their games, was when he was on this Loki. But Scary D looks good on Loki too, so it's not necessarily like we're stripping it from you just so you don't have it. It's also a benefit to the Titans, and I think they first picked Loki in the past before, so it's not even that far-fetched for them to be able to lock this in. I think it's going to put a lot of pressure on the Valks, and I feel bad for him, but maybe onto Johnny. He had a really good performance in Game 1, but he's got to do it again, maybe then some, here in Game 2.
And from an analytical perspective, Gore, do you think that it's in the Valkyries' best interest to continue defaulting towards the second pick option, or do you think it might fare a little bit better for them if they actually had their choice right away with just taking that first pick after a loss?
You know, if I'm second pick against the Valkyries, one of those bands, like I'm dropping that Artemis, well, I guess for them it'd be I'm dropping the Kuzenbo for the Loki again. I'm making sure they can't get it. Now I'm trying to think of what, outside of Loki, what do I want to first pick if I'm the Valkyries? And Neath? Not really. I don't know if there's a lot that they can go for. I don't mind this. I don't know that it's necessarily helping them that they're always second pick. I'm just not sure that they have any one priority outside of this Loki for them to go for.
Well, it seems as though the Tartarus Titans are only looking to try and further enhance that Loki pick for Scary. This Ganesh, Dharmic Pillars, I think is a really interesting ability for utility for the Tartarus Titans here, because it's just going to keep everybody locked in for whoever gets stuck inside there. And unless Gilgamesh or Osiris are really willing to expend their ultimates inside that Dharmic Pillars, Gore, I think that'd be a prime area of operation for Paul to follow up on that Hawa.
You know, so I'm about to throw something into the world that nobody wants to hear. It'd be an insane buff for Odin specifically, but Dharmic Pillars in my mind, it's smaller, but it does so much better than the Odin cage in terms of actually wanting you to stay inside it, because my prots are going to get shredded, I'm slowed, all of a sudden I'm taking a lot of damage. It hurts to get hit by the Dharmic Pillars, and if the Titans plays that well, I mean, a Loki follow-up, a Hebo follow-up, are you kidding me? You're getting absolutely shredded afterward, and it's something that I think you have to be worried about here. And if Odin had any of those on there, he'd be busted. It would be out of the question. I think that Ganesh, because the rest of his kit is so, I want to just say, more passive to be playstyle and the way he matches up, I think it makes things a little more interesting here. There is going to be a little bit of fun, though, because if you misplace the pillars, Paul could accidentally ult and collide with it and then just not go anywhere. There's a downside to it, but I doubt we're going to see that scenario a lot.
I was actually wondering if this Kepri pick would be the fifth ban option for the Tartarus Titans. They actually choose to take away Sobek, but Raffer, whenever he pulls out this Kepri, his sole mission is just trying to keep Zeros alive while he's trying to actually perform that recall demons. And the interesting part as well about the Jean Kui here, Gore, is we haven't seen any team succeed with it thus far in Season 8, but more importantly, I think that the Jean Kui just has a lot of initially tanky stats that could be more difficult for a Habois-Loki combination to immediately eat through.
I will give them a lot of credit. Gilgamesh, Osiris, Zhonghui, and Kepri is a living team. It is not going to, burst you down in a lot of fights. It's going to take you 45 seconds to get through this team, or this team's going to get through you because their health bars are just going to be that much bigger, which, like you said, for Loki, maybe he's slippery enough that he can get out of there, but Habwa doesn't have that. What, you're going to throw your water carpet away and hope that your 1,500 health is enough? You're not going to feel too great, I think, in the face of this. I think they have a lot of opportunities just to out-survive the Titans, but there's a lot of threat and a lot of pressure on them to perform on picks that just have not necessarily performed up to this point.
And this is, I believe, the second time that we're actually going to see Cyclone on this Izanami. And Izanami, I think, to a certain extent, kind of fulfills more or less the same sort of goals as what an Artemis is able to accomplish. The ultimates, though, Dark Portal being more of a silence effect, has that little bit of AoE to kind of work with, although not as large necessarily as the space that's provided inside the box of that Dharmic Pillars. But I think that the Dark Portal, when combined with the Dharmic Pillars and that crushing wave out of the Habwa, could certainly make it incredibly difficult for the likes of a Khepri. If the silence actually hits on the Khepri, he might not necessarily be able to look for that revival on one of his teammates if they fall low, so that could be the initial starting point here for the Tartarus Titans as far as engagements are concerned. But also, just what are your initial thoughts, Gore, on the fact that Heimdallr, I think, a mild counter matchup to an extent against the likes of this Izanami?
Yeah, it wasn't something that I was thinking of immediately. And honestly, when I'm thinking of Imolito, I'll be honest right now, the Kronos is the first thing that comes to mind because he had such a good presence earlier on this year. But I'm interested to see how they're able to handle this. Cyclone was such a big problem last game that this Artemis, yeah, you banded away. Izanami in this team, especially with the range she has, the amount of pin that I could imagine stacking up for a Hunter as well, that's going to eat through a Zhonghui, Khepri, and Osiris, and Gilgamesh. If you have something like the Heimdall to help keep it shut down, you might be able to isolate her and make the rest of your team shine.
Well, we'll get to break down a little bit more of these team compositions, but for right now, guys, we've actually got a remake that's going to be taking place here between these two teams. We want to make sure that we uphold the utmost of competitive integrity for the players on these matches. So, like I said, remakes coming through, but we'll be right back, so make sure to use this break to grab a snack, and like I said, when you get back, we'll hopefully be getting back in the game. Welcome back, everybody, to the SMITE Pro League, powered by Alienware. We are about to embark into game number 2 between the Tartarus Titans versus the Valhalla Valkyries. But just a quick update for you guys, in case you're wondering what the remake was all about. It was unfortunately just a bad server, so due to that having taken place, wanted to make sure the players, again, were able to play on the best competitive aspects possible. So a remake was in order for that server to be basically fixed, and now they're good to go. So we'll be getting into game momentarily, but before we hop right into game right away, Gore, a little bit more of an elaboration between these two compositions. Where are you leaning right off the bat?
I mean, immediately I'm going towards the Titans, and it's just strictly because Zhonghui is 0-11 over the last 2 years, right? Like, I mean, Season 7, Season 8, he has not been having a lot of success.
You don't want this to be the first one?
I wanted to be the first one. I was actually looking up, because I was like, I looked him up, and I was like, all regular seasons, like, Zhonghui has like a 49% win rate. It's like, when was the last time he was like good? Season 6, not that long ago. Like, he was able to get a lot of wins under his belt. Maybe this is like the resurgence, and it's just got to figure him out. Maybe this is the day. Maybe this is the game, Taco, where we start seeing the turnaround. He's 0-9 in Season 8, and now he's going to be 9-9 before we know it.
The Pocket Kepri, I think, could certainly be a nice little boost of confidence here for Zeros, though. Knowing that Zeros is going to be able to play, I think, slightly more aggressive at times, too, just knowing that he has that Scarab's Blessing to potentially come and bail him out of a bad position. But looking at the Osiris and the Gilgamesh, do you feel as if that's enough initiation and front line when combined alongside this Kepri? Because you'd have to imagine that Kepri is primarily there for peel, the initiation maybe not so much.
I mean, because, well, let's see, Izanami, like, Habwa is going to be pretty easy to lock down, I think, for, like, Osiris. Gilgamesh might have to be the one readily available for everybody else, or Osiris is going to have to, like, heavily commit the ult to being able to chase people down. But I think there's a little bit of opportunity. I kind of wish there was a little more engage on the Valkyries, but with Kepri being there, the way they play, I think they have a lot going for them. The downside is, it feels kind of BM to say it, but like the Kepri res is really good to get one person back. The problem is the Valkyries, in a lot of those last fights, were losing 2 to 3 at a time, so they really have to figure out who they're prioritizing here.
So it might just be a dispute of whether or not they should just try to be a little bit more mindful of their positioning in general throughout those team fight engagements. But as far as the Tartarus Titans are concerned, Gore, any final thoughts on where you expect a lot of their focus to be headed?
I think that, man, we're probably going to see Zhonghui not have necessarily a great time. Again, though, a lot of them are tanky on the side of the Valkyries, so I don't know how much, like, first blood capabilities, like, if we were walking back and we turned around and first blood had happened by the time we were able to get out of the soundstage, so I imagine that we're not going to have anything like that happen here. I think everyone's maybe a little too tanky. I say that, but then I look over at the solo lane matchup. Maybe some Hercules things happen one more time, but for the most part, I think it is going to be a slower pace early on for the Valks.
Well, we'll get a chance to see exactly how fast this game breaks out for either of these teams as J-Mac Tucker Nagro takes you guys away into game number 2.
Once again, we get to see the Zhonghui broken out into the mid lane, and once again, we get to see a first relic beads come out for this mid lane mage. Aggro, I know we've talked about it before. The beads on Zhonghui, I mean, it's a necessary evil.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I think you could have gotten away with Blink Aegis this game, honestly, J-Mac. I mean, yeah, the Loki ultimate scares you a little bit, but you're going to have to get a little bit tanky throughout the build in order to withstand it no matter what. You don't have perfect, easy to execute hard CC on the other side. You're knock-up immune during your ult, so you don't have to worry too much about Aurora's dash or Benji's 2 or anything like that. You know, you've got some counterplay options in those moments, so maybe this could have been the one that made it work, but like you said, it's kind of a necessary evil.
A lot of aggression early on both sides of the map. A potential invade for the Harpy here for Emil and Raffer trying to push Cyclone and Aurora out, and we did see some fighting over that mid camp. Now Cyclone left alone as the lone Izanami is going to be forced to dash away. Emil was waiting on the backside for it. He throws out the crystal, but he's going to have to be careful. Aurora's here. And we'll get another set of purification beads, so both hunters, no relic.
Yeah, definitely some disrespect there from Cyclone Spin. I don't know what he thought would happen by stepping up to that wave, but that is what is going to happen to him every time. He's going to lose the beads, and he loses a huge chunk of his HP as well, so now it's pretty easy to get zoned, and that's exactly what Raffer and Emilita are doing. Good job by them, understanding that they've got total lane dominance from here, that one abduct would spell a ton of HP off Cyclone. Wouldn't kill him from this health threshold anymore, but you can't safely go for that wave at this point.
Johnny is just slamming down the W key in the enemy jungle. He's going to get a nice little tether off, forces the beads out of Scary D, and will also work on taking away that Harpy Camp, that Mannequin Scepter, going to help him push that one out very quickly and get another relic off the board from the Titans.
Have to imagine this is a super positive matchup for Osiris Jungle. I mean, the stealth doesn't really bother you because you have your tether to let you easily sort of track it. You right there, you see the aim strike come out, all of a sudden just instantly pop the tether, dealing no damage to me. And I can chill and just stand on your back camps and do whatever I please. Love this from Johnny. Be nice and aggressive. Scary knows he's there. That's why he's not leaving his speed buff because he doesn't want it. He's leaving it because he knows he can't have it. He already lost purification beads, and Johnny can chase him down easily from this position.
Yeah, Scaredy's just going to have to relinquish this one over to the opposite side for it. And I'm kind of with you on this one. I think this might be the best matchup that you can take into a Loki would be this Osiris. It's a warrior first and foremost. So you have that extra protection an assassin wouldn't. Then you also have all those other little benefits you have there. You have the slow. You can track him with that tether. Yeah, I think Johnny's probably, he's probably upset he didn't get his Loki. Like, oh, guys, finally they left the Loki open. Oh, they took it. Oh, well, I guess I'll just get Osiris.
Certainly not a bad pick for him. And you've got great tools to just death ball at the Titans composition right now if you're the Valkyries. I mean, you've got Zhang Kui, who, of course, guns it down with the best of them, Osiris, Gilgamesh, Khepri to revive whoever is the focus of the enemy team, Heimdall, who can really get solo dove and survive pretty well because of his Bifrost and the ultimate and the knockback from the Gallarhorn. Really like the way that the Valkyries have made this composition. And eventually, Zhang Kui's going to win one of them. I don't know if it's this one, but he will win one eventually. I think that the Valkyries have put themselves in a pretty good position to maybe have that be this one.
I mean, statistically speaking, he can't lose all of them, and this is probably one of the better teams built around a Zhang Kui that can possibly get him that win. I think Raffer going back onto his Khepri is probably one of the big benefits from the Aurora. Loses the dash on that, a nice root, and that's looking to be first blood, but Emilitu can't confirm it, can't get that last basic, and now Cyclone's trying to turn it back on them, walking straight at them. Emel's now going to have to be the one who falls back. Raffer walking forward, going to get some nice damage with the Rising Dawn, but Aurora barely squeaks out.
Man, so close. Such a good play by Raffer and Emil. They blink in. Cyclone thinks it's going to be him as the target since his beads were down at the time. He dashes away. That leaves Aurora to be very vulnerable. Good target selection by Raffer. Great interrupt by Emil on the dash. I mean, it all went well. Just a minion wave ended up stopping some of those auto attacks from going through, and Aurora was able to sneak out on the back end. But, hey, again, it's the Valkyries being more aggressive. It's them trying to force plays, make them happen, and not just waiting for plays to happen around them. And that's always what I like to see.
Yeah, what do you think about Paul going back onto this hub wall? We haven't seen it too much this season. It was kind of almost a signature pick for him, especially down way back when he was SEC, coming into last season. He really loved going to this pick. How do you feel about it against this composition?
I think it's a little scary because a lot of times you want to just blow one person up. Khepri Ultimate might stop that. You do have the slow immunity with the carpet up against the Osiris, which I love, but you've got to contend with this ranged root coming from Raffer. And that's the thing, is that Raffer, he's got Blink. I really feel like aggressive Khepri is the correct way to play the character. I really don't like to think of him as this really defensive, in the backline all the time sort of support. I like him a lot against mages like Hebo, where you can Blink Abduct, he has to beads, and then I just root him after his beads wear out, and now he has to ult, or he's dead. And those are his only options. I think that's where Khepri's at his best. So I really like this Khepri pick for Raffer, and I really don't want to be playing a mage that doesn't have mobility like Hebo up against it. It's just a matter of how often Raffer will be here in the mid lane and looking to play aggressive, because we didn't see a whole lot of that last game. It was a lot of him side laning still, and when he did go mid, just absorbing that farm and making sure that they didn't get aggressive on the zeros. This is a matchup that I think that you can afford to play aggressive against, and that's what I want to see the Valkyries do.
I mean, I think just with the tankiness that the Valkyries have, with the double warrior as well as the Guardian for that one. I mean, the hardcore triple front line. Then you throw in Zeros, who's going to be that hybrid tanky mage on top of that one. Yeah, I think you just deathball at them. They're going to try it with the roar. He's going to throw out the pillars just to kind of keep himself a little bit zoned there. Ulted by Johnny, looking for someone. He's got the tether onto Scary and do a roar. Scary's going to turn back on tail, but he's going to be forced to ult immediately because 3 were still Wing at him.
Yeah, but Zeros loses the beads. I mean, I think that just a little too scared in that moment. Raffer's on the way. That should be being communicated. Hey, I'm on the way. We can go. We can go. I've got ultimate for you. Don't worry about it. He gets sundered in Dharmic Pillared, which is bad for you, no doubt. But hit the gas pedal if you're going to beads. You know, beads in. Go in and let Raffer just ult you from behind if you get committed on by this Hebo. Bait Paul in potentially, and then be able to turn it around. I think that overall it was just a bit of hesitation there from the Valkyries. Then you see them kind of realize, oh, that might be a good fight for us. Let's hit the gas. But by that time, the Titans were a little bit too far away. They still get the ultimate out of Scary on the back end, but it costs them 2 ultimates into beads up against 2 ultimates into Sunder on the other side. The Titans are going to be happy with that trade.
Maybe still a little shaken up from last game after not having the best later game performance. Might be kind of getting back to them here in the early game. We'll see if they can clean it up as the game does go on. One big improvement the Valkyries have already had as well. Ducky didn't get first blooded at the first minion wave this time. Still no first blood, speaking of here at almost 8 minutes in.
Yeah, that's the dream, is to not have that sort of repeat performance in the same matchup. And Ducky has learned his lesson. You saw him being very respectful to Benji on wave 1 and wave 2, so rightly so. But now he's got to worry about Benji coming in with Scary D, because Scary has that ultimate ready.
He's going to go right in under the tower, gets a nice little stun. The winds come through. Ducky going to avoid being pulled in for now, trying to turn it back around, but yet again, Benji will be the one to get first blood on the solo lane.
Really smart use of the 1 as Johnny goes in trying to get Scary, but just can't quite find him in that stealth. That activation of the Sunforged Scimitar actually knocked Benji back because he was in the winds of Shamash and nearly bought him enough space to not get driving striked and killed. But overall, just a really easy setup. No beads this time for Ducky. I believe that's what he had in game 1 in this lane. Doesn't have them this time around. Immediate assassinate straight into the combo from Benji.
Oh no, Johnny. There's an ultimate still available for Benji, but I don't know if he has the mana to grab it. Just gets it in time, but Johnny reads the throw and is able to get away from that one. Johnny lives to see another day.
Really good idea there from Benji, but Johnny with the read, as you called. Definitely, I mean, Benji really big brains him, then he could throw it back and let him backstep into it, but I think that Benji makes the right play, just tries to get the kill and forces Johnny to make a nice play to live, and that's what happens.
Now back over into the left-hand side. Emil still pushing forward against Cyclone Spin on this Izanami. We don't get to see this goddess too much in this Hunter role. It feels like she's always had that opportunity to come to the meta, but we never really see players elect to go towards her. I mean, what kind of sets Izanami apart from some of these other more meta Hunters?
It's that she doesn't have a reliable escape. That's really the difference for her. But if gods like Artemis are being played, I have to imagine that she's at least worth trying out, and that's what we're seeing here from Cyclone. If the meta is really centered around Silver Branch in attack speed, it makes a ton of sense to bring Izanami in because she has the best attack speed steroid in the whole game. It is just crazy what her 1 does when it comes to attack speed, the duration of that attack speed, the extra damage that you get on it. It's insane. He's actually maxing it. Wow. So that's an interesting sort of strategy. You don't really need to put that many points into spectral projection because your autos will cleave the wave down anyways. That steroid is crazy. So if we're going with Silver Branch meta, Cyclone's going to be able to press 1 and just hit like an absolute Mack truck with every single auto. I like the idea.
Yeah, complete objective shred more than anything for it. And speaking of objective shred, the Valkyries are trying to take this quick Gold Fury before the Titans have a chance to respond to it. Heads up play by the Valkyries. They get the first objective.
Love it. Being aggressive on the map, setting themselves in good position, good ward coverage. They're able to walk over and use some lane priority that they had in the mid lane in order to leverage it into an objective. Exactly like we saw them do in game 1. Just a matter of transitioning it now into a little bit more.
And so far, that's really the only objective they've been getting. You see over on the top left side there, 3 totems away of the Titans as well as 2 Draugrs. Seems to be the only thing they're really able to get rolling for themselves so far.
Yeah, not a whole lot in terms of those extra little objectives, but I don't think you're too stressed about how many Draugrs you're losing. And beyond the first coup or 2, you're not usually yelling about that too much either. I think they're in a fine position from here. You know, Zeros has been able to get through the early game in a pretty good spot.
Johnny able to steal that objective away. Paul forced to ult away. Zeros throws out the ghost, but they're just so spread out that it's not able to get any kind of value for her. Dharmic Pillars dropped, keeps Emil and Raffer locked in place, but Paul doesn't have much follow-up for the ultimate. Scary D goes in, and a nice revive from Raffer will make sure that Emil gets out.
Very nice revive, but look at this. Cyclone dashes in, looks for Zeros, and the Sunder will let him get the damage done. Zeros falls to Cyclone, and now Emil's going to get caught anyways.
And they might be looking for Raffer as well, or maybe just a Roar to zone him away so they can steal away a red buff. What looked so good early on for the Valks in that fight just turned sour so fast.
And now it's going to keep on
Oh,
going.
no.
Raffer gets caught. No mana really left. I don't know if he's got enough to abduct, and he's been sundered, but looks like that double root is enough to buy him his life back. Again, good idea from the Valkyries. Zeros walks in, surprises Paul, gets his beads, gets his ultimate, and then he just kind of walks away to the left. And the rest of the Valkyries seemed a little bit unsure on what was happening in that engagement. If they wanted to keep on going, it seemed to me like Zeros wanted to leave that fight, whereas the rest of the team wanted to keep on going. And then they just get caught in this, well, now we're eating poke damage by standing here. We're not really getting any effective damage off. What can we do to keep it going? And then they just let Cyclone rotate in. Aurora gets a great Dharmic Pillars, does a lot of damage to Johnny, locks in Raffer and Emilito. And the Valkyries just kind of bought time almost for the Titans to set their feet in a fight that they weren't ready for.
What do you think about this double percent pen start here by Paul going into this super tanky line? Do you think getting this 30% is necessary this quick in the game?
Probably don't need it this fast, but it's not bad, I suppose. I mean, the Charon's Rush is good, obviously. That's what a lot of characters are going. I don't know how much I love the Obshard next item. I think I would have preferred to see something like a Magus or a Divine Ruin or some flat pen, but it's now you can worry about just building luxury items the rest of the game. You know, now you just get to buy your Soul Reavers and your Soul Gems and all this stuff that you normally want, but think, oh, I've got to build pen. You know, I've got to make sure I'm dealing enough damage to tanks, all that kind of stuff. It's kind of like instead of waiting to go to the gym later in the day where you're like, oh, I've got to go to the gym, you go early, and now you can go and do whatever you want with the rest of your day. Not that I would know anything about that because I can never convince myself to go, but I imagine that that's what it's like.
I couldn't answer that question for you either. You're asking the wrong guy for that one, but Tartarus Titans able to keep themselves in a lead despite losing that Fury early on, those 3 kills, and just the farm across the map has netted himself almost like 3,000 gold lead. Johnny trying to push up aggressively at the mid camps, but Aurora and Paul are going to push them back and get themselves the mid Harpies for themselves.
And all of a sudden, it's a 3,000 gold lead for the Titans. I mean, they get the Pyromancer as they lose their red. It just more of the same. The Valkyries had this opportunity, and now we're just still waiting for it to materialize.
Oh, Johnny's already lost half of his health in an instant. Benji's rotated through. He's going to get the pull onto Raffer. Knocking him up. It's going to force the ultimate out of himself very early on. He's going to auto-proc that one on top of the Dharmic Pillars, but now he's got to find a way out of it. Benji gets another pluck, this time on Emil, takes over half his health, gets the beads out. Ducky not going to be able to get the drop kick onto the 2, and the Winds of Shamash will be expended because of it.
And look at where Cyclone's been coming from. He knows he's on a ward, but a great double stun from Scary.
Scary's going to get a nice one through. Zeros goes into the back line, but he doesn't have much damage on the board just yet for himself. Not getting a whole lot of value out of throwing out the Ghost there. All it is feels like a zone tool for him.
Exactly. Stops the engage from continuing there from the Titans. Don't mind that use of Zero's ultimate at all in that moment. But it's really just the Titans, again, being the aggressors, and the Valkyries are able to fend them off. Loved the idea from Emilito. He tried to use his ultimate in order to send Benji away before Raffer could get pushed back off of that pull. It was just a little bit mistimed, but thought it was a really smart idea there from Emilito. Almost a shame it doesn't work out for him. But for all the, for the Gold Fury, for these red buff invades that have been going the Valkyries' way, they're still down 3,000 gold, and I just don't think this is a team composition that is able to match the output of the other side come late game. They had to get a lead and start to just run it down with these pressure picks and really bully out the opposition before they could get the damage to deal with the tankiness. And I think it might already be a little too late for that.
Well, they get the first Gold Fury of the map. The second Fury does go the way of the Titans. Believe Primal Fury at that for them, so it's going to give them that extra little bit of power spike in the jungle fights against those objectives for themselves. And Cyclone Spin yet again going to go ahead and pick up another Draugr for the team, make that one the third one for the Tartarus Titans.
Now Cyclone's up 2 levels over Emilito. You've got a small lead for Benji, who continues to be really impactful on this Hercules, whereas Ducky really unable to match that effectiveness quite yet on this Gilgamesh. you still have the lead for Johnny, but Scary didn't seem too deterred, did he? I mean, he was the one who really got that fight started, walked in and got some damage down onto Raffer before that last fight started. So looking for the Valkyries to find their opportunity. It's probably not going to be for a little bit because neither Emilito nor Zeros have their beads available. Once those are back up, maybe they can try and look for an aggressive play.
This may be the end of the line for Old Ducky. He's going to throw out the winds of Shamashi. A nice stun onto Scary, trying to turn that one away, but Scary immediately uses his ultimate to get out of the fight. Loses the tier 1 tower, and maybe able to pick up at least one here. They got a 4-man rotation on this right-hand side. Long-range route misses on Benji.
And with that, that should be the end of that. But losing the Assassinate in exchange for the wins on the other side, I feel like is a pretty decent trade for the Valkyries because that Assassinate has caused a lot of problems.
Well, Benji's going to get one under the tower, and that might be the end of the road for Old Ducky. I say that, though. Raffer's going to throw out the ultimate onto him. It will finally get popped on the backside for it. Zeros dives into the back with the Ghost, going on to Paul, who has no ultimate. This could be a perfect pickup for them, and it will be Johnny who gets the last hit for that one, claiming the first kill on the board for the Valkyries. But Benji still had that Excavate online and will take one down.
Zero's now in trouble. No ultimate, no relics. Scary back it up.
Good
He's going
route.
to try and let Benji set him up, and of course he's going to land it.
But Cyclone has made his rotation all the way across the map, and they'll be able to take down Zeros on the back end for Scary, and Benji grabs Raffer with the help of Cyclone Spin, now level 18 on the Izanami.
Always in the right spots at the right time, coming in to play cleanup on these fights. And Johnny and Emil are going to give what they can, and that's just snagging this tier 2, but Benji's going to be able to keep both these guys busy while the rest of the team does FG.
Fire Giant already down to half health. Emil going to throw out the ultimate against Benji, but now he is low on mana. He's going to need a nice little crystal teleport to get himself out. Misses the driving strike there from Benji, but he's just delaying it so that way the Titans can pick up Fire Giant.
No, Emilito still has his crystal teleport. He's going to need to use it because Paul was on the way. But a good fight from the Titans. I mean, that's where we want to see Jean-Qui hit the gas pedal, and Zeros did that time. Blinked in, used the ultimate, got both relics out from Paul. They still kill him through it anyways, but it takes too much in order to get it done. It takes a little bit too long. I don't know if Zeros dumped too much of the kit into the Aegis, or if Johnny was being a little bit too patient on his buttons on the back end, but eventually Paul will get to this point where he can just walk in and nearly kill you without use of the ultimate and make you think that it might not be worth diving him at all.
Well, that first luxury item we talked about online, the Soul Reaver, and once again, going towards that cloak, imagine another Mantle of Discord. He had it last game. He loves building these defensive items. Last season, I think it was the Breastplate of Valor he really loved, but Mantle of Discord seems to be his kind of secondary go-to defensive.
He's liked it a lot so far, and it worked out okay for him, I'd say, in Game 1, and didn't really need to use it too much. Mantle definitely going to feel better up against someone like a Zhong and an Osiris who are going to be directly on top of you on their dives instead of someone like a Tsukiyomi who's going to probably get you beyond that Mantle threshold while he's still in his piercing moonlight.
Slow comes through from Cyclone Spin, looking at Raffer, starting to slowly chunk through that HP bar. Gary goes into the back line with the Assassinate, puts Raffer down to half health, and Ducky as well. Johnny trying to go at them into the back line, gets the ultimate out of Paul, and not able to clean it up against Cyclone, and Paul just have a little too much damage for the jungler. Emil also low. Ultimate comes out from Raffer. He's going to get dropped down and also ends up dropping his target right into place.
Yeah, that should do it here in this game too. And Zeros gets in there, gets a good blink ultimate off, and then doesn't have Aegis and just gets one shot by a Sunder into a Hebo ult. Definitely had some opportunities in this one, but the Titans just play too clean on the front line. I mean, Aurora had a really good game. Benji, of course, ended up popping off as per usual on this Hercules. And Cyclone and Paul just keep on eating in the back line.
Ducky's going to need to do a lot of work if he wants to get this, but nobody is letting him get near this Titan. That's going to be a quick 21-minute win for the Titans here in game number 2 to close out this set against the Valkyries. A valiant attempt by them in that first game, but game 2, Aggro just felt like it was all Titans.
I mean, again, I think the composition makes sense to me. I understand the way that they want to be playing it. I understand what they're trying to do. And then they get into the match, and I just don't think the execution level is quite there. And the Titans, credit to them, they see exactly what's happening. They see a composition that's going to blink onto someone like Paul. They get good peel coming from the Ganesh. They get good initiation coming from their jungler and from their solo laner. And they allow Aurora to really play defense for this team. And he did his job really well in this game. Really shut down all these dives onto Paul and onto Cyclone.
And unfortunately, that's going to be another loss in the category for the Jean Kui and another loss in the category for the Valkyries. We'll be back after a break to finish out breaking down Game 2.
Hello, Smite fans, and welcome back to the Smite Pro League powered by Alienware. And it's not just the pros that can be benefiting off of our title sponsor, Alienware's top-tier gear and peripherals. It can also be available for you guys back at home for your own gaming pleasure or even your viewing pleasure if you want to watch the SPL in even higher picture-perfect quality. You can head on over to smitegame.com/Alienware and make sure to plug code SMITEAW for a nice little discount of your own. And not only that, but you can also keep up with the available giveaways from Alienware and more by heading on over to the alienwarearena.com and signing up to join their global community. You can also follow them on Instagram and Twitter at Alienware for both of those socials. And again, can't thank Alienware enough for being our title sponsor here for the Smite Pro League in Season 8, but thanks to Alienware and thanks to the Tartarus Titans, we actually saw a pretty interesting set for the Titans up against the Valhalla Valkyries here, Gore, and they do walk away with the 2-0 finish. But that game 2 was certainly a message sent to the rest of the league by the Titans.
Yeah, I think game 1 was kind of the, okay, Valkyries are here to play. And like you said, game 2 was the Titans saying, no. We are here to vie for first. Like, we are not messing around anymore. We want to progress. And they've done so much of it. Again, the beginning of phase 1, a rough start to them. Then they ended up on like a 4 or 5 set streak. And they've already started to kick off this one really well. And with a nice 2-0 in terms of their sets this week, plus a 2-0, I think, in both of those at that. So getting 4 games under your belt that you know you're being very confident in. And a game where you just don't let up. I mean, it did take a little while for that first blood to come through. Again, kind of not surprising with how tanky the Valkyries draft was, but there wasn't a lot of return damage to be had. That was, I think, where the big problem came through. The Titans were able to just walk forward, and they never met a lot of resistance to stop them.
The Valkyries try as they might to delay the game, I think, so that they could reach their appropriate power spikes for their composition to come online. Benji just was not messing around today, Gore. This Hercules has been an absolute strong pick here for the Tartarus Titans, and Benji was just able to facilitate so much of these team fight engagements, created so much space there for Scary D and for Cyclone Spin to just do whatever the hell they wanted, and it definitely made the Titans look great in the process.
I mean, yeah, it's one of those games where you throw those into the highlight reel, right? Like, you want this in your montage, not just for the Titans, but I think for all of these players, because you're just so far ahead. You know you're getting the kills. You know you're able to style on them. You can have a little more wiggle room. And they were just able to control the map so hard off of it. It wasn't necessarily a high kill count game. I mean, 4, 3, 3, what is that, like 6, 10? That's 10 total.
Just calculated engagements from the Tartarus Titans is really the primary message that I'm receiving off of this. It didn't seem as though the Valkyries were really trying to get all that involved. Again, seemed as if they were trying to just ultimately hit that point of game delay so that they could try and accomplish those power spikes. It just fell short for them here today, because the Tartarus Titans certainly showing themselves to be on their A game here, Gore. And we didn't really get to talk too much about Aurora in the process, but at least in game 2, was definitely super impressed by the placements of those Dharmic Pillars. I think that it just ultimately holds into the Titans for them having a fantastic weekend here in week 3. That's going to boost them on up to that 4th place spot now here in the standings. So the pressure's on the Jade Dragons now in their next set as they go up against the Olympus Bolts. And it's a big game for all 3 of these teams involved, because Titans obviously trying to maintain that top 5 position. And after a great week like this weekend, they're definitely got to be feeling good about it. But for the Jade Dragons now closing things out for week 3, Gore, up against the Olympus Bolts. And Bolts, you can imagine, they definitely want to maintain that first place seeding.
Exactly, and I think you bring in the Kings of the Leviathans in this as well, right? They're 3-1. Like, they see the Titans gaining on them. They don't want the Dragons to gain on them too. They don't have to worry about 6 other teams. They'd like to keep it, okay, the Bolts are a problem. We both are a problem. The Titans are a problem. Let's look at the top 4. And it puts a lot of weight onto this next set, because the Dragons all of a sudden are able to jump up, maybe cause some stress for the Titans there in the standings. But as of this point, I think it's just the question of whether or not the Titans will be able to keep this run going. This has been a really good sequence of games for them, and I'm excited to see when they end up against, your Kings, your Bolts, all that, how things shake out.
Well, Gore, we might get an answer to that question sooner than you think, because we've actually got Aurora, the support for the Tartarus Titans, joining us for the post-game interview. Aurora, you gave us a little debut during Paul's interview, but now in your own special segment, have to ask you, how's the team feeling after this weekend?
Yeah, we're feeling pretty good. It's nice to get a 2-0 weekend, but I don't know. We're feeling good. That's it.
Well, hard not to feel good with back-to-back set victories here, but moving forward into the rest of the weeks to come, where do you imagine you guys kind of line up with everything else that you're seeing unfold in the SPL so far?
I mean, I'm not too worried about weeks to come. I just think as long as we keep focusing on getting better and just trying to win our next set coming up, I think that's all that matters.
Definitely a strong mindset to have when you consider the level of competition that everybody's kind of bringing forward. But for you specifically, what made you decide on the Ganesh in that second game?
I just wanted to play it.
Just feeling it? Just feeling the pick? Is that simple?
So I just picked it. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I mean, big respect to the Ganesh play and for your team as a whole. I think you guys definitely crushed it throughout this weekend. I'm certain the team's probably riding really high off those set victories, but for sure, appreciate you joining us here on the post-game interview, and a little bit again for that pre-game showing from you and Scary. For real though, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Congratulations to the team, and as for the rest of you guys, make sure you stay tuned because we'll be right back with the Jade Dragons versus the Olympus Bolts.
Thank you.